Sunday morning, December 20th, 2020. Paraíba. A police convoy rolls to a stop in a remote riverside area, right under the supports of a highway bridge. Officers lead a man out of the patrol car, handcuffed. That's Kennedy Ramon Alves Linhares, his face hidden behind a surgical mask, his movements calm. The suspect himself brought the investigators to this spot. The man points toward a dense thicket at the water's edge. Fire department crews descend carefully with special gear. Minutes later, rescue workers pull a body from the water. The remains are in a state of advanced decomposition, a clear sign that death came long before the discovery. On-scene experts make a tentative identification. The deceased, Lorraine Damaris Delva. The 19-year-old model had been officially missing for exactly 7 days. Physical searches for her were over. Now the investigation must determine how she ended up in that muddy water under the bridge. Hey everyone, before we dive into today's story, I just want to ask you to hit that subscribe button, give this video a thumbs up, and drop a comment down below. I put a lot of effort into bringing you real true crime cases from all around the world. Only authentic stories here. Your support really helps the channel grow, and I truly appreciate any interaction. To understand what happened, we need to rewind the tape exactly 7 days earlier. Sunday, December 13th, 2020. International Airport of Sao Paulo. The terminal surveillance system is running as usual, capturing the flow of passengers into framed steps. Lorraine Damaris Delva, the 19-year-old woman, exits the plane gracefully. On the grainy footage, she appears calm. No glances around, no hurry, no signs of concern. Lorraine had arrived in Paraíba with a clear plan: spend the upcoming holidays with family and fulfill a long-held dream: undergo plastic surgery. She carried a large amount of cash, saved from hard work. But at this point, the money was just luggage, not drawing attention. In the airport parking lot, Lorraine meets Kennedy Ramon Alves Linhares. External security cameras catch their meeting. This is a critical clue. Between them, there was no visible conflict. They didn't argue. Kennedy didn't use force or push her. Their body language was casual. Lorraine willingly climbed into the car of her former acquaintance. This wasn't a street abduction. She trusted the driver enough to sit in the passenger seat. Almost immediately after landing, Lorraine sends a message to her mother, Andrea Maria de Silva. A simple text: "I arrived safely. Everything's fine." A standard digital check-in for someone used to keeping loved ones updated on their whereabouts. After she sent that final message, Lorraine's phone went completely silent. Kennedy's car pulled out of the airport lot and merged into city traffic. From that moment on, she vanished without a trace. Not a single camera would capture her alive again, and the digital footprint she'd built over years suddenly went dark. The countdown had begun, and soon the silence would grow too loud to ignore. Monday morning, December 14th, 2020, didn't start with news. It started with silence. Andrea Maria de Silva waited for a follow-up to the previous night's message, but her phone screen stayed dark. Not a single notification had come through during the night. She tried calling her daughter over and over. The phone rang, but no one ever picked up. To a stranger, this might seem like something ordinary. Maybe the phone battery died, or maybe Lorraine was catching up after a long flight. But to Andrea, this wasn't just unusual. It was a full-blown red flag. She and Lorraine shared a relationship where gaps in communication like this simply didn't happen. Her daughter never went off the grid for more than a day without a heads up. This was the first time that pattern had ever been broken. Knowing that every hour could be crucial, Andrea didn't waste time. She went straight to the authorities and filed a missing person report. The case was officially opened at the local police department. Meanwhile, friends and family launched a wide-scale social media campaign, spreading Lorraine's photo and appealing to the public for any leads. Investigators jumped into action immediately, reconstructing Lorraine's trip and collecting all available context. Talking to those around her quickly pushed the case out of the routine disappearance category. A crucial detail emerged. Lorraine hadn't arrived in Paraíba empty-handed. She had brought with her a large sum of cash, money she had saved for a long time, meant to pay for a cosmetic surgery procedure. That cash had been the central goal of her visit. That detail changed everything. Lorraine's disappearance now had the potential hallmarks of a robbery gone wrong. She wasn't just a missing 19-year-old. She was a person carrying something valuable. Investigators requested her phone's activity logs, trying to pinpoint the last place her device had been used. While her loved ones anxiously refreshed news feeds, hoping for any sign of hope, law enforcement was already bracing for darker possibilities, ones where that money may have sealed her fate. The investigation quickly zeroed in on the man seen with Lorraine in airport security footage. His identity didn't stay a mystery for long. Kennedy Ramon Alves Linhares. Officially, he was a former partner of Lorraine's, but detectives were less concerned with the nature of their past relationship and more interested in his criminal record. A background check revealed that 32-year-old Kennedy was no stranger to law enforcement. In the past, he had been taken into custody on suspicion of aggressive behavior toward a former spouse, a clear red flag for a potential history of violent tendencies in close relationships. But that wasn't all. His record also included incidents involving illegal possession of firearms and suspected involvement in trafficking restricted substances. To detectives, this wasn't just a worried ex-boyfriend. This was someone with a pattern of dangerous behavior and access to tools that could escalate any situation. But the real turning point, the moment that set off alarm bells for investigators, was Kennedy's behavior in the days after Lorraine vanished. While her family and friends were doing everything they could to reach out, hoping someone, anyone, had seen her, Linhares did the opposite. He went dark. Instead of helping with the search, he began quietly cutting ties, blocking mutual friends and relatives on social media, deleting conversations, locking down his accounts. It was as if he was trying to erase himself from Lorraine's life entirely. This combination, his past history of aggressive behavior, his criminal connections, and now his sudden radio silence, changed everything. Kennedy was no longer just a witness who gave Lorraine a ride. He was now suspect number one. Police realized they were looking in the wrong place. It wasn't about where Lorraine had planned to go. It was about where Kennedy was now. As investigators in Paraíba began digging through digital footprints and piecing together a timeline, Kennedy Ramon Linhares was already on the move. He knew staying in the same city where airport cameras had clearly captured his face was risky, so he initiated what looked like an escape plan, leaving the state entirely. Saturday, December 19, 2020, the Federal Highway Police got involved. Their traffic monitoring systems flagged a vehicle matching the one Kennedy was using. A key detail: the car wasn't registered in his name. He was using someone else's vehicle, likely hoping to throw off license plate recognition systems and buy himself more time. A patrol unit intercepted the car on the highway. Officers pulled the vehicle over. Kennedy was inside. This was the moment where the investigation and the suspect physically intersected. They confirmed his identity, checked his documents, and ran his name through the national system. But on the patrol car's onboard computer, Kennedy's status came back clean. The bureaucratic machine of justice was still lagging behind the speed of a car engine. Nearly a week after the crime, no official arrest warrant had been issued or uploaded into the federal database. With no legal grounds to detain someone simply driving an unfamiliar vehicle, the officers had no choice. They had to let him go. Kennedy pulled back onto the road and continued heading south, slipping past the checkpoint that could have ended his run. Still, this encounter gave law enforcement something critical. They now knew exactly what direction he was headed, what car he was driving. Surveillance efforts continued, but the distance between the suspect and the authorities grew once again. Kennedy's run came to an end in the state of Bahia, hundreds of miles from the original crime scene. This time, paperwork was in order. The operation to capture him was executed jointly with civil and military police. They closed in on a town, far southern part of the region surrounding the area, making the arrest. Kennedy Ramon Alves Linhares didn't resist. At the moment of his arrest, the fugitive wasn't alone. Standing beside him, officers identified Madsen Henrik Pisa, a name that immediately caught investigators' attention. His presence tied Kennedy to yet another criminal episode. Just 2 weeks earlier, on December 3rd, Madsen had already been taken into custody in Campina Grande. At that time, officers found an entire stash of weapons on him: 38 caliber revolver, handgun. Ballistic and serial numbers confirmed that both firearms belonged to Kennedy Ramon. The fact that Madsen was carrying weapons registered to the suspect strengthened the prosecutor's case regarding Kennedy's criminal network. But right now, detectives had a higher priority: the death of Lorraine. Once the arrest paperwork was completed, Kennedy was transported back to Paraíba. He was about to sit face to face with the same investigators who had studied the airport footage frame by frame. Now in the interrogation room, he understood the hiding phase was over, and he chose a new strategy: confession. Inside that room, Kennedy Ramon began to talk. His account took investigators to a rental on the state's coastline, a house used by the Linhares family. According to his statement, that's where he and Lorraine went immediately after leaving the airport. The first hours passed quietly. They talked, and the atmosphere between the former partners seemed neutral. But everything changed deep into the night when their conversation shifted to the status of their relationship. Kennedy brought up the idea of getting back together. The discussion escalated quickly into a heated argument. In his attempt to defend himself, the suspect used a familiar narrative. He insisted that the 19-year-old had allegedly initiated the confrontation, forcing him to use physical restraint in response. Linhares described his actions as an attempt to hold her back. He wrapped his hands around Lorraine's neck, supposedly to stop her movements, but the claimed intention didn't match the outcome. The pressure he applied was extreme. Kennedy kept squeezing her throat till she stopped resisting and lost consciousness, and shortly after, all signs of life disappeared. The cause of death was mechanical asphyxia. This raised an obvious question about the logic of his explanation. If all he wanted was to calm her down, why didn't he release his grip the moment her body went limp? Why hold on long enough to guarantee a fatal result? The conflict ended in silence. The beach house no longer echoed with arguments. On the floor lay the body of someone who just hours earlier had been making plans for surgery, now reduced to an unmoving victim of a crime. Kennedy was left alone with the consequences of what he called self-defense. After the struggle ended and the resistance stopped, silence filled the rental home. Logic would suggest the perpetrator might try to flee or cover his tracks, but Kennedy Ramon didn't move. He stayed in that house next to Lorraine's body for 3 to 4 hours. According to the official interrogation record, those hours were spent in a strange state of denial. During his statement, Linhares gave a contradictory account. He admitted he understood Lorraine was gone, but at the same time claimed he kept waiting for her to wake up. The suspect sat beside the body of his former partner, hoping for something that simply wasn't possible. He didn't call emergency services. He didn't contact the police. He didn't try CPR. He just waited. Eventually, the numbness faded. Hope gave way to the cold reality of what had happened. Kennedy realized he was alone in a house with evidence that could send him away for life. In that moment, Lorraine, no longer someone he could save, became in his mind a liability. That's when the waiting stopped and the cleanup began. He disposed of the body and moved on to the next step: eliminating physical evidence. He drove down a remote rural road far from highways and homes. There, he unloaded Lorraine's belongings, her suitcase and handbag. Moments later, flames consumed them. Everything that could tie her to the suspect's car, ID cards, clothes, makeup, was reduced to ash. Strangely, despite later cooperating with police, Linhares could never pinpoint the exact location of the fire. He blamed it on a foggy memory and the vastness of the area. Investigators were never able to find the burn site, but not everything in Lorraine's luggage was destroyed. The large sum of cash she had brought for her cosmetic surgery was spared. That money, investigators confirmed, was taken by Kennedy. The financial motive added significant weight to the charges. He used Lorraine's savings to fund his escape. With her money in his pocket, he made it to a nearby town, ditched the car at a friend's place, and hitched a ride south in a passing truck, starting the journey that would eventually end with his arrest. Now that the details of Lorraine's final hours and the cover-up are clear, investigators turned to the history between her and Kennedy, trying to understand the psychological lead-up to the crime. Their relationship began back in 2017. At the time, Lorraine was just 16, while Kennedy was near 30. That 13-year age gap, along with Kennedy's position as an older man with children from a previous marriage, created an imbalance in power from the very beginning. At first, it looked like care and protection, but over time, the dynamic shifted into something much darker: full control. Lorraine was building a career in modeling, walking in runway shows, shooting for catalogs, growing her audience on social media. But as her success grew, so did Kennedy's aggression. According to her family, he tried to shut it all down. He forbid her from working, cut her off from friends, and threw jealous outbursts any time she showed independence. What started as a relationship turned into confinement. Home became a high-security zone where everything was monitored, her freedom stripped away. By the end of 2020, Lorraine found the strength to break free. With the help of her mother, Andrea, she planned a secret escape. One night, she quietly left Kennedy's apartment and fled to her family in another state. It was her way out, a successful escape from a cycle of abuse. Surrounded by loved ones who supported her decision, Lorraine finally felt safe. But the decision to return to Paraíba for cosmetic surgery would prove fatal. She believed the relationship was truly over, that her former partner no longer posed a threat. The calm with which he stepped into Kennedy's car at the airport suggests he had changed his strategy. He likely pretended to reconcile or offered to help, all to lure her into a space she couldn't escape. Once in custody, Kennedy Ramon's behavior took a drastic turn. During the cover-up, he had been calculated and cold, but in front of TV cameras, a different version appeared, one that looked broken, full of remorse. During transport, with his face hidden behind a medical mask, he communicated with reporters using only hand gestures. When a journalist asked whether Lorraine's refusal to restart their relationship was the motive behind the crime, Kennedy shook his head, rejecting jealousy as the reason. But when asked if he felt remorse for what had happened, his response was emotional, tears and a strong nod. Yet when the reporter suggested he say something to the victim's family, Kennedy firmly refused. He was ready to cry for himself, but not to speak to the mother of the woman whose life he ended. As the court date drew closer, Kennedy leaned into the image of a repentant man. Local news outlets aired footage of him clutching a Bible during custody transfers. Meanwhile, his legal team shared claims that their client had begun a hunger strike. His attorney went public, expressing deep surprise at the situation, describing Kennedy as a calm and balanced individual for whom aggression was allegedly out of character. But that carefully crafted image of a quiet Christian crumbles when held up against the hard facts of the case. Facts that include strangulation, sitting next to the body for hours, and taking money that didn't belong to him. The performance continued right up until the start of the trial, but the evidence spoke louder than the suspect's silent tears. Tuesday, May 23, 2023, the final act unfolds inside a courtroom in the state of Paraíba. The trial lasted nearly 10 hours, grueling marathon testimony and legal arguments. First to take the stand was Andrea Maria de Silva, the mother who lost her daughter stared straight into the eyes of the defendant and demanded the full weight of the law. In her statement, she emphasized that Kennedy didn't just take a life, he shattered the foundation her entire family had been built on. The case built by detectives, from airport security footage to his own admission burning Lorraine's belongings, left the defense with no room to maneuver. The jury's verdict was clear: guilt. The judge delivered the final sentence. Kennedy Ramon Alves Linhares was sentenced to 25 years and 6 months in prison. The conviction included an aggravating factor: the crime was classified as femicide. Neither the prosecution nor the defense filed an appeal. In addition to the prison sentence, the court imposed civil liability. The convicted offender was ordered to pay damages to Lorraine's family for emotional suffering. The compensation was set at 20,000 Brazilian reais, approximately $4,000 at the time. Under guard, Kennedy was returned to a maximum security facility where he will spend the next quarter-century. The case of Lorraine Damaris Delva is now officially closed, leaving behind a folder in the police archive and a date etched on a gravestone.